Welcome to this episode of Grassroots Advocacy. This is our 30th episode, and over the course of the previous 29 episodes, we've talked about a lot of different facets of what it means to be a grassroots advocate. And it occurred to me as I was preparing for today that it might be helpful or useful for us to go and look at some specific examples of folks who serve as grassroots advocates, or who have served as grassroots advocates. However, before we do that, I'd like to encourage you to consider this definition of advocacy. In its simplest terms, grassroots advocacy raises the level of awareness regarding certain causes or issues at either the local, the state, or the federal levels. Now, in our particular case, what's probably more appropriate is to think about it in terms of what's happening at the bedside or at the point of care, because that's where you have your greatest impact. So as I was thinking about our time together today, I did some research and I came up with 3 examples that epitomize various parts of the grassroots advocacy concept. And so the first of those 3 examples that I found actually came from the foundation of our nation, our founding fathers. Our founding fathers are grassroots advocates from a number of perspectives. First, they were ordinary, everyday citizens, just as you and I are. They got together, they shared their ideas and their opinions. They didn't necessarily always agree, but they could agree to disagree in a constructive way. They also epitomize grassroots advocacy because they knew how to get together to bring themselves together in one sound voice, one solid voice, to start to build the foundation for the nation that we have today. They're also grassroots advocates in that they represented a diverse cross-section of our society. You had some very educated folks. You had some folks who had strong ties to Great Britain, to England. You had some folks who had Puritan ties. So you had a wide cross-section of society coming together in a common voice to perpetuate a common good. So the next example I'd like to share with you comes from the healthcare community, and that's Florence Nightingale. Now, Florence is known as the mother of modern nursing. What some folks may not necessarily realize is that a number of the best practices that we have in the healthcare system today are as a result of Florence's advocacy. For example, she wrote in a number of instances over the course of her professional life about the need for paying good attention to environmental sanitary conditions. She also wrote about the importance of training and perpetuating professionalism. She also had the opportunity to really had the opportunity to shape the future of healthcare by consistently speaking up, even when it wasn't necessarily convenient, when it came to the important role that nurses play in the delivery of care. So our third example that I wanted to share with you today is President George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker Bush. I chose President Bush as an example for a variety of reasons. First and foremost is that we're celebrating his life of service this week as he is being laid to rest in College Station, Texas. But that's not the only reason. When I think about what it means to be a grassroots advocate, to be passionate, to be committed, to be focused and energized, to seek to make things better than the way they are today, I think about President Bush. I think about the fact that at age 17, during World War II, he wanted to go and sign up to be a naval aviator. They said, "No, George, you're too young. You've got to be at least 18. So President Bush, on his 18th birthday, made sure that he was at the recruiting station to sign up to serve. He served as a naval aviator in World War II. and did a phenomenal job, was shot down, but went on to continue to fulfill his service. That's not the end of his story as an advocate, though. When President Bush got back, he went to college, then he moved to Texas, and he believed in public service, and he believed in the importance of this nation and this democracy to such the degree that he committed his life to public service. He served in the House of Representatives, and based on his work in the House of Representatives, he was given the opportunity to serve as vice presidential candidate for President Ronald Reagan. President Bush served under Ronald Reagan for 2 terms. Then President Bush became the 41st President of the United States of America. And he committed his life to promoting the common good for our great nation. And then once he left office, he had the opportunity to continue to serve in a variety of ways, promoting charitable works, doing good things. And as I read this week, and I've been listening to commentaries, there are 3 things about President Bush that I think we can all learn from and we can all support and try to emulate. The first is graciousness. I heard a really great story about President Bush and his relationship with the president that defeated him, President William Jefferson Clinton. And President Bush wrote a most beautiful note that he gave to President Clinton, or that was provided to President Clinton on his very first day in office as President of the United States. And it said, "I wish you luck. You are our president, and I will support you fully." And that is definitely a lesson worth learning. It's important to be a good winner. It's also important to be a person who is able to be larger than themselves. The second lesson that I got from President Bush that I think we can all emulate and really try to embody is the fact that our nation, our service as caregivers, that is larger than us. And President Bush, throughout his career, embodied the fact that it wasn't about him, it was about the nation. And this is true for us. It's not about us. It's about the women and men that we care for on a daily basis, our nation's frail, elder, and disabled citizens. The third lesson that President Bush taught us that I think we could definitely carry forward is understanding that we can disagree with someone's perspective and still appreciate them as human beings. To be that have that gracious communication. So when we think about these 3 examples, these are all individual human beings or groups of people who imagined something better than what existed in their time. For our founding fathers, they envisioned a free land where we could all have a freedom of speech, freedom of religion, all of the great gifts that we enjoy. For Florence Nightingale, it was about imagining a healthcare system that was much more productive and much more appropriate to meet the needs of folks. And for President Bush, it was about sustaining a country and helping that country to continue to move forward on its ever forward journey to becoming the greatest nation in the world. So as I wrap up today, I would like to encourage you to think about this quotation from Alexander Hamilton. Experience is the oracle of truth, and where its responses are unequivocal, they ought to be conclusive and sacred. Your experience, your work, your passion are the undeniable truth, are your undeniable truth. And if you put those experiences, those passions into work, you will be an unstoppable grassroots advocate. I look forward to being with you for the next episode of Grassroots Advocacy. Until then, be well.